John Fury declared himself to be the best fighter in the UK over the age of 50. He'd previously called out the likes of David Haye, Tony Bellew, and even Lennox Lewis to fight him in the ring. Mickey Theo then pops up, who's a couple of years older than John, disputes his claim, and challenges him to a charity boxing match in an arena with a crowd, ref, judges, the standard setup. After initially accepting the challenge, John Fury does a complete 180, refusing a boxing match and insisting it has to be a bare knuckle fight instead with no cameras or crowd. He claimed the reason for this change of heart is that he didn't want to take his shirt off and expose his middle-aged body to a large crowd of people. Sounds ridiculous, since he was given the option to fight with his shirt on, and last year he readily took his shirt off in front of a large crowd of people in Saudi Arabia. According to Mickey Theo, the real reason for John's about turn is that after making some inquiries, he apparently found out that Mickey can really fight. I don't know whether that's actually true or not, but it certainly sounds more plausible than John's explanation. Mickey kept pressing John to accept his initial challenge of a boxing match, but John kept refusing, growing increasingly hostile and claiming that he's only interested in a no-holds-barred street fight away from the cameras. Mickey eventually agreed to fight John bare knuckle as long as it's in the ring with a crowd under standard boxing rules, but John once again refused and insisted Mickey instead fight him in a field or in a gypsy yard. He then switched the topic and said he wanted to fight Mike Tyson in a boxing match instead. Bear in mind, he refused a boxing match with Mickey Theo on the basis that he didn't want to take his shirt off in front of a crowd. You guys figure that one out. After several months of back and forth, John eventually agreed to face Mickey in a boxing ring, but only in a gym in Manchester owned by one of John's friends. And Mickey was only given a couple of days' notice. After being furious in every video for months and threatening to do Mickey serious damage, all of a sudden John was being polite, saying that they could have a boxing match and then he'd buy Mickey a drink afterwards. Obviously, this sounded suspiciously like a setup, and Mickey once again insisted on fighting in a neutral location on camera with a crowd to avoid any funny business. A perfectly reasonable and understandable request. But John wouldn't agree, and eventually the whole thing fizzled out. To me, it seems clear that John Fury did not want to fight Mickey Theo in a boxing match, and his excuse of not wanting to take his shirt off was utter nonsense. John is an ex-pro, and Mickey has never even had an amateur fight, so you wouldn't have thought that John would be concerned about losing. On the other hand, John hadn't boxed since the 1990s. He'd spent time in prison and wasn't in great shape, whereas Mickey Theo is a fitness fanatic. He's been in shape his whole life and had been regularly sparring amateurs and pros in the gym for years. Perhaps after 25 years of inactivity, John just didn't trust his own fitness and was worried about losing to a guy who, on paper, he should really be wiping the floor with. It's one thing losing to a fellow ex-pro, but to lose to a keep-fit boxer would be extremely embarrassing. Whatever the case may be, John didn't want to box him. So the tactics he used to avoid the fight were to move the goalposts, to try and make the terms for the fight so unappealing and extreme that it would cause Mickey to walk away. Why does this sound familiar? The apple never falls far from the tree.